Hello, folks. Welcome back. Welcome back. It's Wednesday. It's Wednesday, and it's time to go live with the Virginia Democratic Small Business Coffee Show. Always a little bit of Bob, right? That's right. We're ready to have you back. We're so happy to see you again. Hey, I got my new tooth back. It's this one. There it is. Got my crowns back. Got my smile back. Happy to see you. Oh, let's groove to it for a little bit. Could you be loved? Welcome to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Coffee Show. Live coming at you. We're happy to see you. Don't let them fool you. Don't let them fool you. Oh, no. Come on. Hey, come on. Get them on our own, folks. Come on, come on. Got a great show for you today. Great guest. And we're going to go through a few things as I bring Bob down a little bit. But remember, come on. Hey. Could you be loved? And thank you so much for coming back and seeing us this week, whether you're at your own demand or whether or not you're here with us live, you see it later, or you see some clips. We're coming at you from all of our platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, live. We're trying to get Instagram up, folks. We're also trying to get online callers, but we're still working our technology. I'm so happy to see you back today, though. Honestly, I am. We've got a whole lot to do. We got about 14 days into the major big election coming up. So folks, you got to make sure you're registered. Got to make sure you're prepared to vote. Got to make sure you're checking out your candidates. And you got to do all those good things so that we can get stuff done. We got stuff to do. And I just want to let you know, thank you for being here, however you see us, whenever you see us. But we're into our, I think this is my 70 episodes, some reruns, some live, but most of them are live though. So we're just happy to see you here. It's been a little more than a year. Happy to see you here and making sure my internet doesn't freeze on me. I get upset about that, but there's nothing you can do. We got to live with the technology and live shows. So folks, thank you for being here. And remember, I just want to welcome the Small Business Caucus members. I want to welcome the the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus members, small business folks who are out there that we're trying to reach, and just Democrats and all folks who are not Democrats, who are in love with democracy, in love with doing the right things for the country, in love with making things happen. Well, you know what? You've got time to get it done. You've got time. There's still 14 days left. So we got to make sure we sprint through that finish line, making sure we're making calls, making sure we're prepared to vote, making sure our family and friends know, making sure all of those things get done. So folks, make sure you're doing all those things. And I'm a little warm today. I don't know why. I think it might have been that little workout that I was doing in my shed, but it's still getting to me. Let me get some water. Give me a second. Folks, let me start it off as I always do. And I simply tell you, folks, we're still out there in the COVID season. We're still out there trying to make sure that people are healthy, that people are keeping themselves and their family members and their neighbors healthy, and their other business owners healthy. Make sure you've done what you need to do, whether or not you are taking your shot, or whether or not you're taking your booster, or whether or not you're social distancing when you feel like you need to, wearing your mask when you feel like you need to. The choice is up to you. A lot of information has gone out there for folks around COVID, but it's still out there, folks. So we have to make sure that we're doing everything we can do. And I'm a little warm here today. Let me turn my fan on. Hold on a second. I'm gonna squeeze over here for a second. You can't see my fan. It's off the camera shot, but that breeze feels good. Listen, we just try to be genuine. We try to be authentic. We try to be casual. We try to be giving you good information, and just want to let you know this is a person-to-person talk, and we bring on some folks who talk with us afterwards. So we're going to keep on doing what we need to do. But folks, before I do that, let me make sure that I can slide into the theme that you know I'm always going to talk about. You know, that's it. Voting rights. Voting rights. Yes, all democracies start with voting rights. If you can't vote, then you cannot choose people who represent the ideals and the beliefs that you want to have happen. You can't get policy turned into law. You can't do all the things that are important. And that all starts with your vote. Voting rights is fundamental to any democracy. So, yeah, I want to talk about small business stuff, but at the same time, while talking about small business things, I need to let you understand we can't get those policies that we want done in small businesses. We can't get equity. We can't get participation. We can't get more contracts. We can't do any of these things unless we have laws to protect ourselves and our families. And that all starts with your right to vote. That starts with your right as an American citizen to exercise your right to the franchise. That is it. You got to be able to get your exercise on with the franchise. So when people are doing things that are not right, you can show up at the voting poll, which is the least you can do. There's more things you can do. You can support your candidate. You can get out there and make calls. You can get out there and knock on doors. You can make sure you bring friends and family with you. You can get out there and just, as some people say, just put up a chair and sit in the middle of the street and say, hey, I'm tired. I'm not taking it no more. We need voting rights. We need to make sure we're making this the best possible, most perfect union that we can get. And folks, that's what we're trying to get this union where it needs to be. And you know what? We may take a few steps back, but we take a few steps forward. I'm not tired, and I certainly hope you're not tired. Well, I'm not saying I don't get tired, but I don't give up. I stay with it. I'm encouraging you to stay with it. That's how you get it done. It's about the long game. But the short game coming up on November 8th, vote. That's easy to do. Get out there and make sure that you're making sure you're doing early voting too, because early voting is happening in a lot of states around the country, and we're all in the midst of doing early voting where most of the states do allow that. I know here in Virginia, we've been at it for a while. I think since like September 23rd, and I think it goes through the 5th of November, around about that. But I've been talking about that and reminding folks who are in Virginia, vote early. Get that vote out the way. Bring a friend to the polls with you. Get it done. So there's no mistake that actually happens to you on the day when it comes time to vote, and nobody tells you something that's all kind of crazy. But you know what? I am going to go right into talking about Voting Rights Act, just reiterating and staying on that one trick pony that I've been on. I can talk about the American Rescue Plan. I can talk about laws that the Congress has passed with the George Floyd bill. I can talk about how we're very upset about what's going on with the rescinding of Roe versus Wade and women's right to privacy and the women's right to health care. I can talk about all those things, but the root of how you get there is through a representative democracy, and a representative democracy means that you have to have the right to vote. And that voting right bill is all important, all important. You know, I'm going to go ahead and start what I usually do. I'm going to start out saying, hey, there's something you can do, and then I'll give you a call to action. You know what it's going to be. But first, let's start with what I call the trifecta of civil rights laws. Okay, we're going to talk about voting rights here for a quick minute before we bring on our guests. And those we're going to go with first is the 1964 Voting Rights, Civil Rights Act, The Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It also provides provisions in it, and its act to forbid discrimination also on the basis of sex, as well as race in hiring and promoting and firing. Those things are important. And just have a couple of pictures down showing you how people have died in many wars, who have done the civil disobedience, and to getting to the point with that picture on the left where we get to Lyndon Baines Johnson, our president, who actually signed that act into law. And there you have Martin Luther King. You kind of recognize who he is, and LBJ, everybody recognizes them. And then, of course, you got kids all on the bus together. It's a beautiful thing. But you got to first have civil rights, right? So we got that done in the 60s. But you know what? We weren't done. We had to go even further because there were still problems. So guess what happened in 1965? You had the Voting Rights Act of 1965. This act signed into law August 6, 1965 by Lyndon Baines Johnson. The Congress passed a law that outlawed discrimination in voting practices. It adopted it in many terms It was adopted in many southern states after the Civil War as discriminatory practices, including things like literacy tests and other prerequisites of voting. What they call that, folks, nowadays, that's just called voter suppression. But that voter suppression was targeted at African Americans. And a lot of fighting went on as far as civil disobedience. You could see that picture to your bottom left-hand corner that says, "We demand voting rights now." The law gets passed in Congress. Once it gets passed in Congress, President Lyndon Baines Johnson signs that voting rights bill, and you see there again with the iconic pictures of LBJ, Ralph Abernathy, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. You can see Dr. Martin Luther King on the mall and other different places, but also you can see also that a warrior at the time for civil rights and voting rights is John Lewis, on the who's right there as a young man in college on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, basically almost was killed trying to get that law passed. So folks, you can't take these things for granted. But what did happen was some bad things happened in 2013. The Supreme Court of the United States decided, hey, there's no more problem with voting rights. There's no more issues with race in this country. And in 2013, the Supreme Court of the United States, they basically took the heart of the voting rights bill, which is known as the I'll get the word right in a second, pre-clearance, which basically meant, and I'll talk about that in a second. They said, well, if you want pre-clearance put back into the law, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute, then just pass another law and put it back in. But I can tell you, bad things happened as soon as that happened in 2013. But before I talk about that, I'm going to talk about the last thing I always talk about, and that is the last trifecta of the Civil Rights Act is the Fair Housing Act of 1968. So you had 64 Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, and then a few years later, 68, the government realized, there's a lot of discrimination that's going on in the sale and rental and financing of houses based on race, religion, national origin, sex. They outlawed all that and went on further to outlaw it for handicapped individuals or family status, which has more to do with either whether you're single or married, or nowadays if you're in an LGBTQ relationship. But that title, Act 8, as it's known, is the act that basically said this is a Fair Housing Act. People have to have a place to live. People have to have their basic rights, civil rights respected as Americans, and they also have to have the right to vote. So those are the trifecta of the basic civil rights acts that happened in the 60s. A lot went on for that to happen. Remember, we've been around, 1776 to 2023. This country's been around over 250 years, you can count. But nothing really happened to really protect those rights that are outlined in our Constitution, but we needed to take it further and pass these laws. So every American, regardless who they are, gender, sex, race, religion, it doesn't matter. Every American has these basic rights and voting rights and their civil rights and their fair housing rights. And from them, other laws were passed after that. Things when you hear those things, people talk about the Miranda rights, which have been attacked here, and also the Roe versus Wade was that court case was one then, but it wasn't codified. People are trying to get that codified into law now, since the Supreme Court basically took that away from Americans as well. So there's a lot of stuff we need to get done. Okay, so let me tell you what some of the things that have happened since then. In 2020, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act was passed in the House of the Representatives. And basically what it did was modernize the Voting Rights Act formula for determining discrimination in states and localities. It also declared any changes to voting rules had to happen at least 180 days before an election, which was part of pre-clearance, because pre-clearance basically says before any states can pass any laws affecting voting practices in their areas, they must get pre-clearance from the Department of Justice. And that is the part of the Voting Rights Act, as I mentioned earlier, in 2013, that the Supreme Court, basically the heart of the Voting Rights Act was the enforcement from the feds. They took that away. And the next thing you know, people who were practicing voter suppression and discrimination in the Jim Crow era and before went right back to doing what they used to do before. But of course, now it's more like Jim Crow Esquire. They do it in ways where they don't exactly say race, but all the suppression activities that are laws that are being passed, those particular laws attack a particular group of people in their voting practices, specifically African Americans. And that is not a good thing. It should be made free and clear and unfettered access to the polls. So we passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And then the next thing that got passed was the HR 1, which is the For the People Act, which went even further and basically expanded access to the ballot box by reducing the influence of big money in politics, strengthening ethics rules for public servants, and also it implemented some anti-corruption measures, fortifying our democracy and for other purposes. And let me go through those points again. I'll just say it again. It expanded access to voting by automatically having same-day registration nationwide, 2 weeks of early voting mandatory, a ban on all purging of the voting rolls, restoring the full protections, as I said earlier, of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which was decimated by the Supreme Court in 2013, as I indicated earlier. But it also has finance reforms, like banning foreign money loopholes, also adding election security, independent commissions to prevent gerrymandering, where you're saying, well, what's that? Well, that's what politicians do, where the politicians pick the voters rather than the voters pick the politicians. So added that into the law as well, and also provided resources and grants to states to replace voting machines and additional processes for auditing and securing elections results. And that's a big deal, folks, because it's one thing to get through all the obstacles once your voting rights have been obstacles have been put in the way. But then what has also been happening with the voter suppression is they're looking to actually change the outcomes of the voting once people have voted. So they're saying, well, heads, I win, and tails, you lose. It doesn't matter what you do. I'm going to be an election denier. I'm going to say that this isn't the case. I'm going to throw this all back to the local state legislators, as opposed to what we have now is a nonpartisan counting of the votes and specific laws and ethic that were out there prior to laws that basically said, listen, here's how we traditionally have done things in this country, making sure that all the votes get counted. And we don't have things like happened on January 6th with the insurrection. Basically, everybody votes, we count the votes. Whoever wins is whoever had the best persuasive conversation or argument. And then we just vote. But we still have to deal with other things. You know, we have the electoral college, which is not based on necessarily one man, one vote. But the popular vote, many people have won popular votes in the past, but have not won the election. But we're not even talking about that. What we see happening now in this country, and it doesn't matter what side of the fence you sit on, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican, whether you're an independent, people are attacking the very fundamentals of democracy itself. That is what's on the line. So I don't care. I've never cared where you sit. I mean, I prefer if you be a Democrat, but I believe you have the right to vote if you're an American, plain and simple. And you don't have to vote for who I vote for. But the point is, all votes are counted, they're tallied up, and whoever the winner is the winner, and there's a peaceful transfer of power. That is what a democracy is about, plain and simple. Where you have people now who don't want to do that. They want to see a dictatorship. They don't want to see one person, one vote, and the electoral college do its thing. They want to have an autocracy. They want to have a monarchy. They want to have a theocracy. Basically, They don't want to do what the Constitution of the United States says that we should do. And I'm simply saying that we all take an oath when we're in government and we're in the military to protect this country from enemies from without and from within. And we swear to that Constitution. Ever since you were in kindergarten, you put your hand on your chest and you would say your Pledge of Allegiance to the United States. This is what that is all about. This is why we are the best and the beacon of the world when it comes to democracy. And these things are extremely important because we don't want to see what happens in other countries happen here. And we also don't want to see it happen in those other countries. The United States has always stood fast and firm for democratic government. Period. End of story. It's not about race. It's not about gender. It's not about how you feel policy-wise on, whether or not you're pro-life or you're pro-choice or whether or not you feel one way or the other about, any racial or sexual issues having to deal with people's choice of who they want to marry, who they want to love. You have those freedoms in the United States. And you have a way of being able to change things that are not right in this country. And that is what our Constitution allows us. And that is why I've been saying this now for, 70 episodes. Folks, democracy is on the line. Voting rights is on the line. Small business opportunities are on the line. All of these things that make this country what it is are on the line. And what we need to do is make sure on November 8th, that will come out and vote for whoever your candidate is, and make sure that our votes are protected and that the tallies are correct and people don't try to change things. We're going to do what we've always done in this country and have that peaceful transfer of power on a local, on a state, and on a federal level, because we're Americans, and that's what we do. That's what we died for in many wars, starting from the American Revolution right through all other wars, through the Civil War, through a couple of world wars and many other battles and conflicts since then. We've always stood together on that principle, and no one is going to change that, not on our watch. So let me go ahead and introduce you to, man, we do have an excellent guest today, and I want to talk a little bit about our guest. And excuse me as you see me fumbling around with my technology as I do every week to try to make sure I'm bringing up the right information. And I'm going to do it now, folks. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our guest. Now, our guest this week is a fantastic person, and I'm going to make sure I didn't do what I did a couple of weeks ago. I went through the whole introduction. I never put up their promo. I don't want to do that this week. I'm going to do it now just so I don't screw it up. Okay, sorry, my name is MSNBC. It's me in my office trying to get it done. Okay, here we go. Let me put her up there. Okay, boom, there it is. Our special guest today is Robbin Warner, and she is one of the badass women of the network NoVA. Yes, in this role, she is the producer and director of the Friday Power Lunch, which you see that little graphic there to your right. A video podcast that amplifies the voices of Virginia Grassroots. She's also the event coordinator of the annual Women's Summit. And now in its 7th year, so they've been getting it done for 7 years. I've only been out here for 70 episodes for about a year and a half, but they've been kicking butt for 7 years. Okay, so we really like what she's doing and what Network NoVA is doing. And also, she's the co-founder of Postcards4VA, which is a statewide grassroots postcard writing organization that helps spark the national postcard writing movement. So folks are probably saying what that is. I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'm going to let Robbin tell you what that's all about, okay? Because she can explain it a lot better than me. But also, prior to becoming a full-time activist, Robbin taught writing at the George Washington University. Yep, right here in DC in the Northwest. She wrote our first books on internet advertising and the nonprofit use of the internet. And also, she's not done. She does something I'd love to try some of. She's a trained chocolatier. She got her training in Brussel. Wow. I got to have some of that chocolate. I'm going to ask Robbin about that when she comes on. I need some. I'm a chocolate lover. unquestionably my favorite flavor. Okay, and Robbin, let's tell a little bit about her personally. She holds a BA in anthropology from UC Berkeley. Oh, so she's been getting it done in the book. And not only that, she has a PhD, a doctorate in folklore and American studies from Indiana University, where she wrote her PhD dissertation on women who gave birth to Grassroots Environment Justice Movement. So she's been getting it done, folks. So let me, without further ado, and I got to get my applause thing working. I got to say, hey, we need to bring onto our stream Robbin Warner.
Hey, thank you so much, Mark. Excited to be here with you today.
Oh, I'm excited to hear you. I'm excited. I get excited with everybody, but I particularly, you guys have been doing some fantastic stuff. And I'm just kind of amazed to see all the stuff that you've been doing. And it is something that people need to know about. So here I am, willing to get you online and talk about all the fantastic stuff that you do. So Robbin, I'm going to get off the mic for a second and just let you tell us a little bit about Robbin Warner and Network NoVA.
All right, well, let's start with Network NoVA. We started right after Trump was elected. First action was the Women March, but then a bunch of us met at a Adopt a Candidate campaign, because right away we realized that what we needed to do was get, Virginia was going to be the first state with a statewide election. So we said, we need to get these candidates elected. And a bunch of us got together and said, you know, not only should we elect these candidates, but we need a reason to get together, and decided to do a summit. So in 3 months, we basically pulled it together, got about 300 people there. And what was magical is we invited every candidate who was running, and most of them had never run before. Remember, this was in 2017. And there was a moment, here we were in this, and we were in this building, and we had all these like 30 candidates up on the stage, and each one introduced themselves. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is going to be so boring. But instead, it got the room electric. And we started with a room full of people and 30 candidates marching. But by the end of that hour mark, they were no longer candidates. They were our candidates. And you know what happened in 2017? They went from everyone saying maybe we could get a handful, if we were lucky, elected. We got 15 elected. So we're now showing the website. There you go.
That's me screwing up on my production. Just keep going when I screw up.
Okay, well, so we've been doing the summit ever since. And when the pandemic came, we moved online, and we now go to different locations in the state. We're not only do a big one in Northern Virginia, but we are also in rural Virginia, as well as the Hampton Roads area. So the Women's Summit is very near and dear to our heart. It gets activists together to get energized, to get to learn more, and now, you know, with these days after the pandemic, to feel again like the community we are. But from the pandemic, when we did our Women's Summit online, we kind of enjoyed it and started doing our video podcast, the Friday Power Lunch. Just kind of grew out of the 2020 Women's Summit. And basically that Women's Summit never ended. We just kept meeting every Friday. And what we do is it's a video podcast that we record live, but we have an audience there. And the first hour is with guests, but the second hour, we open it up and everyone can talk and have it. And there are a lot of people who just come for the second hour, which is a little known secret.
Okay.
But we have wonderful guests. We have authors, politicians, political analysts, and it's looking at what's going on in Virginia from the lens of the grassroots. Because as we know, there's a lot of media out there, but they don't necessarily look at it with our best interest in mind or our viewpoint in it. So that show is every Friday from 12 to 1. It's recorded, and then you can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on Facebook. So it's always available in it. So if you want to be part of the live broadcast, go to networknova.org/live, and there's links there to be able to get your Zoom registration, or just go to our website, just go to networknova.org/live and watch past episodes, or you can follow us on YouTube as well.
That's fantastic. I haven't had an opportunity to get on one of your live events, but I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Absolutely. So not only do we do that, we also are very involved in helping with candidates, helping being part of the Virginia Grassroots Coalition. When we see something that needs to be done, we don't say, somebody else should do it. We just do it. Like, for example, you see, we've got fun yard signs. It's one thing to have yard signs that just have a candidate's name, but right now we need to get the message out, such as vote like democracy, like your freedom depends on it, right? We also have signs out there, vote early signs. We have vote pink signs. We're out there making politics fun. And like we believe it's the long game. Too many people look at Virginia as one election, then they roll up their carpet, and then they wait and then come out and start it again. And we're like, who came up with that? It's the long game. We need to build on the institutional knowledge so that each election we get better. We're not starting from scratch.
Now, listen, I put something together that's talking about something you guys are recently promoting, and I'm going to throw it on the screen. My production skills may be a little rusty, but you can still talk to this when you see it on the screen. So here it goes.
Okay.
Tell folks about this.
Yes. Well, we've got a lot of things. We've got a lot of canvases going on to help Elaine Luria. And on the left, you see that was a postcard. That's been a banner. I think people have got all sorts of things about it. And with Chesapeake, that's a really must-win area for Elaine. So we've been encouraging people to go down there and help Elaine with canvassing. But not only Elaine, we also have been encouraging people to help with the Wexton campaign and the Spanberger campaign, wherever you are and wherever you want to go. A lot of people from up here have been, making that drive down to the Virginia Beach area to help Elaine. In fact, we had a women's summit there just to help Elaine. She's got a tough race, but you have to support her. And that artwork that you're seeing there with Elaine, vote for Elaine, like your freedom depends on it, was done by Dennis Orsinger, who does a lot of wonderful artwork. And there you see, Pink the Vote. Gotta love it.
Gotta love Pink the Vote. And once again, folks, this is going to be happening on October 29th, Saturday, and October the 30th. And when you go to this website that's across the top, you can help out where it says https www.mobilize.us, Lawyer for Congress /event/ whatever that number is. I even put in one of her people's contact name. His name is Eric at Elaine for Congress. And you can see that little red block down here which says highest priority canvas for Elaine Luria. So folks, go to that website, sign up to Mobilize, help out Elaine Luria. The event address is private, but once you click on that information or contact this gentleman that's listed, Eric, you will be able to help out one of these serious races where she's at a very high priority, not forsaking the rest of our Democrats.
But she's got because
but Elaine needs our support this weekend, so we're going to call the cavalry in. What are you going to say, Robin?
Absolutely, just that because of redistricting, she has a harder district than she had. Absolutely.
I want some of the other great things that you've been doing. All right, you're ready to take a breath and stop you. Go ahead. What you got to say?
All right. So postcards. I'm the co-founder of Postcards4VA, and we started it right after, after Trump was elected. And the way we got into it is we saw that when Ossoff ran for Congress, that was the first race after the election, they were writing postcards for him. And some girlfriends and I said, you know what, we could do that because we're all introverts and canvassing really wasn't what we were interested in. And we did a bunch of research and knew that because Virginia was going to be the first state with the statewide election, that we wanted to build something in our state. We didn't want to use something that was already built. So we basically founded the first state operation to do it. And the first candidate we wrote for was Elizabeth Guzman. She was running, and we went to her and said, "We want to write postcards for you." And she said, "Sure, why not?" Nobody really knew what they were. Yeah. And that first year, we were so thrilled. I think we ended up writing like 100,000 postcards, and we wrote for any candidate who wanted to work with us. And we, what we loved is we saw a lot. People love doing postcards, and we did a study to figure out why were people enjoying doing postcards. And we realized it was all about community and all about groups. So we changed our focus from giving people individual postcards to helping groups form. And we were realized we were right on the mark, because when the pandemic came, it was the postcard groups that were the groups that were still around and could immediately pick up and start working for the election during the pandemic. Because our postcard groups,
postcards, by the way,
because our postcard groups are the amazing example of the long game, because the election is in November. 2 weeks later, they're writing postcards for the next election. What other group is doing that?
Beautiful thing you guys are doing. Keep it up. And in Virginia, we never get a break. There's elections every year. So
elections every year, and we get better, and we're getting smarter at how to do it. So we're very excited about our postcards. And in 2022, our big push was for Loria, Wexton, and Spanberger. But we did help down in Virginia Beach, wrote for local candidates in Chesapeake. I know people are writing postcards for Catherine Reed, who's running for mayor. I mean, it used to be postcards was something that people kind of looked at askance. Now, first thing the candidates do is call us up and say, "We want to make sure we have postcards." So
what about those postcards?
What about those postcards? Because, well, like you said, you started with your song about love. Well, postcards are a bit of love coming into your mailbox to show you that, politics is about love. It is personal. It's a smile. It makes you feel good.
Exactly. And you know what? Every time I receive one of those postcards, I've received more than one. They're always handwritten. They're not these mechanically produced. Somebody took an ink pen and actually wrote the information on there. And I was like, wow. I believe personal notes that you send to people are the most effective, the next best thing to actually knocking on their door and saying, vote for me or support this candidate, because it's such a personal connection.
And I think after the pandemic, people are a little hesitant to open their door now. People are like, well, I don't really, you're knocking on my door. I think, it's changed a little with people. A lot of people don't want. And then there's also, now people have cameras and they can see who's at the door. So canvassing is getting tougher and tougher.
Exactly. And actually, I kind of like those cameras. I got a Ring myself, give them some free advertisement. But you know what it does allow you to do? Even if you're not there to talk to that canvasser, you can talk to them on your phone.
You can talk about it, and you don't have to be face to face.
There's another side to it. It works both ways. Let me tell you something. I saw something that was extremely interesting. I know you went to UC Berkeley, but you got a couple of books out that you've written. How did you get involved with that? What made you want to write books on that particular subject?
Oh, well, all right. So this is going to go way back. Okay. But I actually spent a semester teaching at the at Irkutsk State University in Siberia. And when I was there, I saw how NGOs in Europe were using the internet way back to talk to each other. And when I came back to the US, I was talking to someone and I was explaining what I saw. And he says, "Do you think anyone's doing that in the US?" And I said, So I wrote an article about it. And then I wrote a book called The Nonprofit Guide to the Internet. It was the first of its kind. I had to argue in this book, believe it or not, that the internet was going to be a big deal.
Oh, really?
And it was so early that I actually could list every organization that had a website. And from that book, we did an event, we did a conference called the Nonprofit Guide to the Internet, and we invited all the nonprofits that were having and organizations that were having websites. And we gave them awards. And you know who got the award for the most humorous website? The IRS. Because back their very first website, they actually had, Mark, a button that said, click here for instant audit. Gotta love that. The entire web team came to the event because they couldn't believe somebody went to their website and understood it was meant to be funny.
That is amazing. I mean, you predated the For Dummies books, right?
Oh, way before that. And then after I wrote that, and I wrote a couple versions of that, I was very interested in advertising and would advertising go into the internet. And back then, the internet was all about promise and potential. And basically the big ad agencies said, call me when you're a mass market media. Well, now the internet has totally taken over advertising. But back then, you know, people would at work, and they were just beginning to play with algorithms at that point. And now you see where they've come. So I've been playing with this a long time, and it's, you know, it's used for great things, and then we see the trolls, and it's used for horrible things. So
it's used for horrible things, but you know what? We still have the ability to just to get out there and get things done. And one of the other things that I noticed that you've done too, you've also taught. So you've been an instructor as well, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was my career choice. I wanted to be a college professor and did that for most of my adult life. You know, I've been at all the Georges, George Washington, George Mason, and did a little bit with Georgetown. So my parents used to say, I know you teach at one of those Georges.
Well, I've taught at all of them, so just name one. Now, what about you? Are you local here? Are you from Northern Virginia?
Yeah, I live in Alexandria, in the neighborhood of Delray. And
that's where you grew up, in this area? Huh?
No, I grew up in California.
Okay, so that's why you're UC Berkeley lady. Okay.
Well, you know, I went there really because my sister went there, right? Isn't that how you end up going? You know, a sibling goes and then you follow them there.
Yeah. And it's also a pretty good school for activists and for a lot of good folks come out of UC Berkeley. So I can see why you're pretty sharp.
It was a great place. In fact, one of the teachers that really influenced me was Laura Nader. She was a professor of anthropology, Ralph Nader's older sister.
Really?
Teaches in the anthropology department there. She has since retired. Unfortunately, everybody I studied under has since retired.
Well, listen, tell me a little bit more. I mean, we had a great event the other day with some of the caucus organizations within FCDC. We had the Black Caucus, Latino Caucus, Small Business Caucus got together, had a chance to talk to one of your colleagues, Stare Calhoun, right? And tell me about how you guys have, were you guys the founding members of the network NoVA, or how did it actually all come together? How did that organization come to be?
It actually started, Stare Calhoun and Catherine White actually knew each other before the Women's March, but that really galvanized of what they were going to do with it. And I actually met them shortly thereafter. So really the two of them started it. And how do women roll? It's with your friends. So it was two girlfriends who brought in other girlfriends. And then we just went from there. And really all the women that we started it with, we still work together these years later, which is pretty amazing. I mean, some people are more active than others. As an activism, some people could devote all their time. Some people need to take a break. But when we do these events, everyone comes in, which is really wonderful. And I think it says a lot about the organization.
Well, I also like to hear, and I'm glad to hear that because I've known about Network NoVA for a while, but I haven't attended any of the events.
What's with that?
I will be attending some in the future, but I have been invited, okay? But I wanted to ask you a little more about a couple of specific issues. Let's talk a little bit about that Roe versus Wade decision and give me some of your views on that and how you believe that can affect the election coming up and how organizations can really use that to get voters out to vote.
Well, I think it shows that they threatened to do it and they got the chance and they did it. And I think as my husband always says, when a zebra shows you their spots, believe them. So here we've got Roe, and it's definitely a galvanizing force for women, whether, older women like my community or as well as younger women. And I want to say, Gen Z is incredibly active and vocal on this issue. And that gives me a lot of hope in Roe v. Wade and what has gone on with the Dobbs decision. But it is outrageous. And I think what you saw with Oz's statement last night about that, a woman's birth control should be a discussion between her doctor, and her local politician. What are they talking about? They're finally saying the crazy out loud, because really, that's really what you have. They peddle in trying to control. All they want to do is control women, and it makes you wonder why. Well, you go to a college campus, and who's all the top? It's all women. And I think what you've got is
60% women at the school, if not higher. I mean, they're the ones who are.
And you go there, and you want. You basically, you don't have to go far to say, where are all the men? They're not in the colleges. They're not excelling in any way. So I think it comes back to, what do you have to do? Instead of climbing up, you need to pull people down, because let's be clear. All of this about birth control and abortion has nothing to do with the sanctity of life. It only has to do with controlling women. If it was about sanctity of life, there would be no hunger. There would be, there would be no death. Death sentences. People would believe in the sanctity of life. Instead, it's just about control, which is, quite phenomenal in there. Now, so that is certainly a galvanizing issue for women, as well as the ERA. Here we were in Virginia. We ratified the ERA, and it still hasn't become the law of the land. And that's very frustrating for the women of Virginia, because we work so hard to do that. And, it gets very tiring to be told, okay, wait your turn. It's like, wait a minute, how long are women going to have to wait our turn, when pretty much we are the majority of the population. We hold down the economy. There isn't a family that runs that doesn't have some woman, at making sure that family runs. And why are we wait our turn? And then you're seeing shenanigans like what's going down at, Bristol, Virginia, where the local officials want to make it illegal to have abortions there. I'm not quite sure why they are going after abortion. I guess maybe American women have to go after sex. I don't. It seems that it's anyway.
Well, I think that it's going to be an issue that they believe is motivating their turnout. But I think that it's going to backfire, because women, no matter what side of the fence that they sit on, they all need this privacy. They all need this health care. They all need to be able to make these decisions. So I think when folks go into the voting booth, I think that they're going to vote their interest. And hopefully that's what they do. And they don't try to vote for someone who wants to demagogue the subject, not because they're concerned about life or concerned about people once they get here. They just believe that gives them access to power. And I want to ask you, and I think you've already said it, you believe that that's what's going on. But when we talk about the issue of voting rights, how do you think that that is affecting women voters as well?
Well, I think the attack on voting rights, is so fundamentally wrong in what's in a democracy. And they're trying to get closer and closer to fascism. And I don't think they even understand what fascism is. I don't think they understand that they think it's good for them at this moment. But when fascists come in, it's not good for anybody. And if people were really behind the Republican Party, they wouldn't need to lie and cheat. And all of the attack on the voting rights is because they can't win honestly. And if you can't win honestly, then you start cheating. So anytime I see people who can't do something honestly, I mean, that's basically it. They don't think they can win. So they're trying to cheat. And what is the only foundation of the Republican Party right now? Lying and cheating. They've got no policy. All they have is they lie and they cheat. Other than that, they lie about the issues and they're trying to game the system. I mean, that's all you got.
Well, I try to tell people, on this platform, as I try to use it to talk about what it is that Democrats can do, what it is that well-meaning Americans can do in order to make these things happen. So let them use their platform to talk about them, but you brought up all the fantastic things that are being done by Network NoVA, all the fantastic things that our Democrats are doing with voting rights and dealing with trying to get the Roe versus Wade decision reversed through making it all codified so that we don't have to worry about the Supreme Court doing at least I'll back up and say vigilance is the key. Get things done, then make sure you don't get undone. And that is where I think that the lesson that it is that we've learned from this is, well, once you get it done, a right won is not a right sustained unless you protect it. And the way you protect it is through being activated, making sure that you're voting, because the folks that you elect are putting people on the Supreme Court, putting people on general district courts, locally and, on a state level. So you got to stay activated. And that's what you guys been doing. So you got to keep doing what you're doing. We need what you do.
Well, I love your spirit. The other thing I want to say is I want people to stop getting obsessed with the doom and gloom you see on the media. It's like they're trying to psych people out. If you don't believe you're going to win, you're not going to win. And they're like the doom and gloom parade. And I think we have to realize that we have a lot to be proud of, a lot that's going on that's positive, and that we need to be about, we are the party of optimism, and that we get things done. And there's a lot to celebrate. So if you start hearing people go doom and gloom, you just turn the channel.
Turn the channel. And me being an old athlete from playing a little ball in college and in high school, hey, nobody goes into a game talking about we're going to lose.
Exactly.
That's what practice is for. You practice what your strategies are, and then you implement them at game time. You go in there with a winning attitude. And even if you should lose, that's not the end of the game. Right. It's not the end of lost that battle. But the long run is what's important. You have to stay with it. And I think that's what your organization has been doing. So again, people get out there and support Elaine Luria, and it's being specific to Virginia, even though anyone can see this show. Jennifer Wexton, right, and Abigail Spanberger. Of course, Luria has, that challenging thing at the end of this week, this weekend. If folks could make it down to Chesapeake, get it done. Get down there, support her, or maybe get on the phone and see what you can get done that way. If you can't make it there physically or reach in your pocket, send some money. But it's not over until we say it's over.
Yeah, and if you can't get down to Virginia Beach, you can go to Mobilize, because there are things going on for Abigail Spanberger and Wexton all weekend long. So if you can't make that drive, and if you can't physically go anywhere, you can call, you can text, and you know what else you can do? You can write postcards or letters to family members and friends, or give them or call them up, because we all know somebody who might need a little help or a little reminder. So don't forget that you could influence someone just from a phone call.
And the other thing I tell people all the time, you've got elderly folks who need to get to the polls. They can vote early. Give them a ride to the polls. They come down there and let them vote early on this weekend when you have some time. See who in your neighborhood is having that sort of challenge. Say, hey, sir or ma'am, or your friend or your neighbor, let me drive you to the poll. They can come up to your car. You can vote that way, or you can drive them there, and they can get to the polls, whether they're having some mobility issues on a walker or in a wheelchair, and just take them in there and let them vote. Because a lot of folks that's what I'm doing with my dad this weekend. He's 86, and Bob and I get in the car. We go down to those polls. He gets one out there. Dad's got a little mobility issues. He's got his walker, and we're going in there every year. We get it done.
So you're all about voting love. There you go.
Voting love. It's all about voting rights. It all starts there. I mean, I don't have to say it. Voting rights, voting rights, voting rights. There you go. So you have to get out there and get it done. And once again, you guys at Network NoVA have been doing some fantastic things. I'm trying to look. I didn't ask you yet about this whole chocolate thing. Tell me about how you became a chocolatier in Brussels. How did that come about?
Well, my husband and I were living in Brussels. He was at NATO.
Okay.
And I started writing articles about chocolate shops and got to know the owners. And then they said, oh, you want to learn how to do it? And I started going in. And before I knew it, I was apprenticing and taking courses at the Chocolate Academy and spent several years apprenticing as a chocolatier. And you make chocolates every day, day after day after day. Get pretty good at it.
Wow. Wow. So do you still do that? Do you still make some chocolate every now and then?
I sure do. With Belgian chocolate, which is just wonderful. And Belgian chocolates are chocolates that are, made in the molds. So they're filled chocolates.
Okay. I've got a hustle you up some
exquisite chocolate.
You know what? We're getting near to the end of the show. We get it in about an hour. But there's a question that I always ask all folks who come on the show. Is if you were queen for a day and you had that magic scepter or wand, whatever you want to call it, and whatever you say, it gets done, what would be the first thing that you do?
Oh my gosh. Well, because we're so close to the election, it would be that everybody wants to vote and they go vote with their girlfriends, their kids, their family, that it is the thing to do. And they feel great about it. And everybody asks them, so did you vote? Where did you vote? What did you do? That it is the thing to do.
I like that. You're right on that.
More that voting love.
That would love. You know what? Now, I've kind of put some of your stuff out that's on your promos, but if you want to give any of your social media handles so folks can know what do you want to
So our social media handle is at Network Virginia and at Friday Power Lunch for Twitter and Instagram. And we're also on Facebook, Network NoVA. So you can find us. If you look, you almost can't take a step without tripping over us.
There it is, folks. If you want to contact Robbin Warner, you want to contact Network NoVA, you want to help out any of the ladies who are out there who are running for office for the United States Congress, you've got all the information. For Abigail Spanberger, for Elaine Loria, and for Jennifer Wexton. But most of all, you got to make, what is it called on Friday? What do you call it? The Power Lunch? What's that called?
The Friday Power Lunch.
The Friday Power Lunch. Get out there and support Network NoVA, and most of all, get out there and vote. And I want to thank you so much, Rob, for coming on the show, because we love you, and we want you to keep doing what you're doing. And thank you, Network NoVA and Postcards for VA. Excellent work.
All right. Thank you.
See you next time. Here it is. It's your part. Could you